Good morning, sixth graders. Today we are starting with multiplying fractions. So I'm going to have you do a few vocabulary words to review parts of fractions. So the first vocabulary word that we're going to look at is numerator. Numerator is the top part of a fraction. It tells you how many parts you have. So an example in 1/2, the numerator would be the 1. Tells you you have 1 out of 2 parts. Part 2, or vocab word number 2, is denominator. Denominator is the bottom part of a fraction. It tells you how many parts make up a whole. So our example of 1/2, our denominator would be 2. In simplest form, when the numerator and the denominator have no common factors. So we're going to look at 1/2. Our common denominator is 2. Simplest form, when we start, we have 2/4 is not in simplest form because they have in common the factor of 2, so we're going to divide them both by 2. So we get the simplest form of 1/2. So our simplest form is that 1/2. So if you need to, pause the video and make sure you get these all written down. Multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. So I can multiply fractions and mixed numbers. So these problems might look like 3/2 times 6. You might see 5 1/4 times 3 1/2. You might see something like 1/4 times 6 2/3. Why do we need this? When might you use finding the multiplication of a fraction? So you might use this when you are doing baking, construction, when you're working with any sort of measurements, all sorts of different times you might use fractions. So finding a fraction of a number, multiplying, recipes, measurement, construction are all times that you might use multiplying fractions. So how do we multiply fractions? So when we are multiplying fractions, you always multiply straight across. So just think like the lines of the road. We always multiply straight across. You always reduce or simplify your answer to lowest term. No improper fractions. So a good trick is you can use cross simplifying to get your product down to lowest terms. So first we're going to look at what we would do. So our first step would be to just multiply across. So we take 3 times 1 is 3, 4 times 3 is 12. Well, 3/12 is not in simplest form, so we would have to divide. So we take 3/12 divided by 3, and we get 1/4. Well, the nice little trick is if you cross simplify before you multiply, you can skip that reducing at the end. So you're looking for factors before you multiply. So we see that 3 and 3 have a common factor of 3. So we would divide them both by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So now we can multiply straight across because 1 and 4 don't have any common factors. So 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 4 is 4. So we get that 1/4 still, but we simplified before we multiplied. So let's look at it again. If we have 5 times, or 15 times 2, we would get 30. And then we have 5 times 22. So 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 20 is 100. 100 plus 10 is 110. So we need to simplify. So we're going to divide them both by 10. So we get 3/11. But now, if we had cross-simplified before, we can look across. Do 5 and 15 have any common factors? Yes. 5 goes into both 5 and 15. So we're going to divide those by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Now we can look at our other diagonal. We have 2 and 22. Do they have anything in common? They have 2. So we're going to divide them both by 2. So we're going to divide 2 by 2, which is 1. And 22 divided by 2 is 11. So now we multiply across. So we take 3 times 1 is 3. 11 times 1 is 11. So we get the same answer of 3/11, but they were a little bit easier numbers to work with when we cross simplify. Now we're going to look at multiplying mixed numbers. So there's an extra step that we need to do when we are multiplying mixed numbers. So our first step we need to do is we need to turn all of our mixed numbers into improper fractions. So before we can multiply, we have to turn our numbers into improper fractions. Then we can multiply straight across. Always simplify your answer to lowest terms. No improper fractions as our answer. So we'll have to turn them back into mixed numbers for our final answer. So remember, when we're turning a mixed number into an improper fraction, we take how many parts are in a whole times how many wholes we have, then we add how many parts we have to start with. So we take 6 times 2, which is 12. Then we take 12 plus 5 to get 17. So our new fraction is 17 over 6 times, then we have to do the same thing with our second fraction. So we take our total parts times our whole. So 4 times 3 is 12 plus how many parts we had to start with. So 12 plus 1 is 13 over 3. So now we can look at our diagonals and we can decide, is there anything that we can cross simplify? Nope, not this time. So now we have to multiply straight across. So we take 6 times 3 is 18, and we take 17 times 13. I'll work that off out to the sides. 17 times 13. 3 times 7 is 21. 7 times 3 is 3, plus 2 more is 5. Cross it out, put my placeholder. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 1 is 1. I add them together. I get 1, 12, 2. So I end up with 221. Now I can't be done yet because I have an improper fraction. So now I have to figure out how many groups of 18 can I make out of 221. I can make 12 groups. So I'd take 221 divided by 18. Then I would take 12 times 18, which is 216. So 221 minus 216 is 5. So I end up with 12 and 5/18 as my final answer. Okay, I want you to try this next one on your own. We'll come back and we'll go over it together. Okay, so our first step is to make our mixed number into an improper fraction. So we take 5 times 3, which is 15, and then we take 15 plus 1 is 16. I'm going to change colors so you guys can see a little better. So we would get 16 over 3 times 1 times 2 is 2 plus 1 is 3. This time we can cross simplify. We have common factors. So a common factor between 16 and 2 is 2. So we're going to divide these both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Let's look at our other diagonal. We have 3 and 3. 3 divided by 3 and 3 have the same factor of 3, so we take 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now we can multiply straight across. So we have 8 times 1 is 8. 1 times 1 is 8. So we have an improper fraction, so we take our numerator divided by our denominator. 8 divided by 1, we end up with 8 wholes. So our final answer would be 8. Okay, you will find your assignment in Google Classroom.